Welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and so happy to be back here for a Monday, ready to do it for another week. And it's pretty hard to come up with a better Monday than spending 2 hours in the afternoon with Trent Horn. Trent Horn, you know, is an apologist here at Catholic Answers, a speaker of renown, and a great debater. Mostly with people who are in one way or another grumpy about the faith, but he keeps a cheerful disposition about it. He's the author of a whole bunch of books, including Why We're Catholic, and he's one of the authors on Layla Miller's new book, Made This Way: How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. Hi, Trent.
Hello, Cy.
Congratulations on getting on Layla Miller's book.
I'm one of the authors with Layla Miller. You mean the other author, the co-author?
I don't know, is this wrong? I mean, I think of it as Layla's book, and then you're one of the authors.
It is told through Layla's voice, but if I had to compare this book, I would say, imagine you had a coin,
Yeah.
and you laid it on a table. Layla would be heads, and I would be tails. Layla's what you see, but I'm just as equally important to that what you do not see.
And Layla doesn't mind if you think about it that way? She's okay if you...
If you had to pick, okay, Cy, which do you want?
Sorry.
Which do you want to be? I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, go
snap
ahead.
question. What do you want to be? Heads or tails?
Tails.
Really?
I don't know. Sorry, heads.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean that's fair. I think most people when they call it, they usually call heads. But
Do they really?
I don't know. That would be a
don't
good
know.
that would be a good poll for us to do on Catholic Answers Live. Just ask people heads or tails.
And then, well, we actually have a question for people today. It's
do?
way harder.
Oh, okay.
We're taking calls from people who are not religious, and we're asking them, why are you not religious?
Yes.
And I think I say it that way with that tone in my voice because maybe we have the notion that you'd probably be better off if you were religious.
I think there's certainly virtues to that. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to anyone today who is not really religious. You might identify as an atheist. You might identify as an agnostic. You might be spiritual in general. You might have just a kind of general belief in God, but you don't belong to any religion. There's lots of people who identify as being non-religious. I think among millennials now, 1 in every 3 people under the age of 30 don't identify with any particular religion. So if that is you, we would like to know why. Feel free to call in.
And the number is 888-318-7884. That's 888-318-7884. We are Catholics, and we don't hide that. We're happy to share that we come from that perspective. But we love talking with people from all different backgrounds and traditions, or even maybe if you feel you don't have any religious tradition at all. We'd be just thrilled to speak with you. 888-318-7884. Today, we're holding the phones for people who say they are not religious, and we'd like to know why. Are you not religious? And I imagine in your various travels, especially when you give talks and things, people tell you why they're not religious. What are some of the things you hear about those under 30s in particular, maybe, about why they're not religious?
I think some people say, Cy, that they don't see how religion of any kind is relevant to their lives right now. They think, look, I've got what I need to do. I've got my friends, I have my job, I have my career, I have my hobbies. I feel like I have everything in place. What do I need religion for? What's really missing there? So a lack of relevance. Other people will say to me they think that religion contradicts something that they believe in. They'll say, well, faith, or a lot of religions, especially Christianity, contradicts science, or faith contradicts reason. So I don't really want to have that contradiction in my life. I can just believe in science and reason and just kind of be on my way. And to some people, I think there is a personal issue they've struggled with in their own faith, emotional, theological, any kind of reflection, something that has caused them discomfort, concern, or even pain, and so they kind of drifted away from their faith in that process.
Yeah, and there's the do you ever have a sense, well, let me just put it this way, I have a sense, and I wonder if you share this sense with me, that there's a way in which the more connected to pop culture you are, the less you might be encouraged to be religious. Not because pop culture is, hateful or something to religion, but maybe in some cases it is, but that there's a general kind of mindset in pop culture that's connected to the glamour of this world, maybe more than to deeper realities of human existence. You're looking at me like, no, you are nuts for thinking that.
No, not at all.
Oh,
my
okay.
my,
All right.
my concerned look was one of agreement to the consequences that I think are very sad.
Yeah.
That for many people, when you look at popular culture today, I would describe it as atheistic in that very general sense of atheism, of a definition many atheists put forward. Because a lot of atheists will say atheism is just a lack of belief in God. Now, I don't think atheism is exactly that, because I think it's a lack of belief in God for a certain reason, because you don't think there is a God, or you don't think there's any good reasons to believe in God. But just the general lack of belief in God, I think we see that in entertainment and news, that you watch movies or films, there's hardly any that showcase reality from the viewpoint of protagonists or characters that have a very devout faith, for example.
Yeah.
Or if Christians show up on television, a lot of times they're usually some kind of a legalistic, shrill, hysterical stereotype. So I think that the people that are looked up to are seen as just those who are virtuous, which is ironic because religion. A lot of people think that religion is just following just some kind of a creed and pie in the sky by and by. I just believe in the right thing, and that's that. But religion is much more than that. It's about trusting in God, and through the grace of God, living out a virtuous life. So I think a lot of people, when they look in culture, people they look up to are usually very virtuous, or at least they exemplify some virtues very well. Like even if they have problems with some virtues, they're very prudent or very courageous individuals. And so they don't see that our faith is not something that sidesteps that. Those ideas come directly from it. So it's one of the things that we could probably talk about today.
Why are you not religious? That's our question for today. The number 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I'm one of those people who is not as down on reality TV as other people are, and now you're gonna think I'm nuts, but I can remember watching television in the 70s and 80s. I grew up on 1970s television, basically. And there was virtually no mention of God or faith or religion on TV. There was not a golden era in any regard in that sense. And when reality TV came out, some of these reality TV shows, people have real religious struggles. They talk about God. Now, I'm not saying the shows themselves are great, but I actually think that's better. I mean, TV, all right, it's mostly junk. But at least in reality TV, I can remember one that had this rock star, this kind of over-the-hill rock star on it. I don't remember what it was, what the show was. But he was talking about his own loss of faith. I think he had a child that was sick and then regaining his faith in God. And I thought, I never saw that episode of Happy Days or All in the Family where there was a loss of faith and a struggling and a regaining faith. So
know that Tom Bosley did play Father Brown in a limited edition series, though, Si. Tom Bosley of Happy Days fame. Richie.
I'm guessing that was Tom Bosley. That wasn't Fonzie you were doing.
No, I hey,
Yeah,
that would be Fonzie. So I am sympathetic to that, though. I do remember there were other shows. There was that one movie that came back. I think it was like 70s or 80s, where God appears to like this teenage kid. He's kind of an older man. I just remember one of the sequels is called
Oh God.
Oh God, yeah, Oh God, You Devil was the sequel. Oh God.
Oh God, with George Gracie Allen's husband.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't believe that I've forgotten his name. It'll come to me in a minute.
I don't know. So I guess it depends. The furthest we've gone away from that, then I guess as a kid, I remember Angels in the Outfield. Something like that.
Right.
But I do think that with modern social media, there is a lot of alternative forms of media. So you have people who have YouTube channels or Instagram. George Burns.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did the Peanut Gallery fill you in on that? Or
No, it just came to me, yeah.
George Burns, yes. Yeah. So with modern social media, I think that we're able to see people who have devout faith reach a lot of individuals, and people who are devout in different areas of celebrity, their ability to share their faith to be replayed and multiplied on social media. So that is one virtue of what we have today. I remember when Chris Pratt gave essentially a wonderful sermon, an exhortation to people at the MTV Video Music Awards not too long ago. And there was a time where people would have made mention of it and gone on, but the more you can replay and share things like this. So
Yeah.
there's pluses and minuses in the kind of world we live in that regard.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. The number 888-31-TRUTH. If you'd like to tell us why you are not religious, we would love to discuss it with you. 888-318-7884. And right now, fall store-wide summer. I keep saying fall summer sale. I don't know why I do that. It's all these books that we have here that you hear about on this show are on sale. If you go to shop.catholic.com, you use a promo code CALive18, you get 20% off hundreds of items in our online store. Go now, shop.catholic.com, and begin saving when you put in the promo code CALive18.
Hello, this is Bishop Jeffrey Monforton, Bishop of the Diocese of Steubenville. Make sure you keep it on Catholic Answers Live. God bless you.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
We do our best to keep you, well, connected to all the events happening in our one holy Catholic and Apostolic faith, from Rome to back home here in the U.S. and around the globe. It's also our goal to help each and every listener like you take this beautiful faith of ours out into the public square with great ideas on making a difference through engaging the culture.
Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo. Tomorrow morning, 9 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you not religious? That's our question today. Trent Horn, author and speaker extraordinaire, is here to have a conversation with you about that. If you're not religious, why are you not religious? We'd be happy to talk with you. Boomer, Becca, Michael on Facebook. Also, Tom, thanks for telling me it was George Burns when I couldn't remember who
I knew there was a peanut gallery.
the greatest comedian of all time is. I wanted to make sure I got the names in. But George Burns is the funniest man that ever lived, and I forgot his name. But he's not as funny as his wife, Gracie Allen. Have you ever seen the Burns and Allen show?
No, I have not.
It's genius television. It's black and white, but they break the third wall. It's like, in the old times of television.
The fourth wall.
The fourth wall.
The
Yeah,
third
no,
wall.
they broke the third wall.
The
No,
third wall's behind them.
yeah, no, they broke the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Like George would just turn and talk to the camera in the middle of a scene.
Okay.
It was wonderful television. Burns and Allen, you should look it up. Ashley in Chicago, listening on 91.5 FM. You are up first today with Trent Horn. Why are you not religious, Ashley?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I guess I wanted to call in because I very strongly believe in the good of humanity. I identify very strongly as atheist. So earlier, one of you guys said that it's a disbelief in God. I would go beyond that. For me, it's a belief, I guess, against God. No offense to you guys whatsoever.
None taken.
But for me, I do not believe in God because I believe people are naturally good. I'm a social worker. I work with people with developmental disabilities, and so I think that sort of can model my view a little bit, but I think that you can have a very strong, kind heart without a God guiding that. And I also feel like a lot of times, in my view, religion can get in the way, and sometimes it can cause people to kind of have an us versus them mentality, and there's a lot of hatred due to religion. And without religion, I am very confident in my moral standing. I believe I'm a good person. I'm a stand-up citizen, and I developed that on my own and with the help of my family and friends and community. And for me, God is no part of that.
Okay. Ashley, I do want to ask you about your atheism, since it's rare on Catholic Answers Live for us to get someone who is, no offense to you, such a devout atheist. So I would enjoy asking you a question about that. Before I get to that, though, I have another question. What do you what is a good person? Like, what defines whether someone is a good person versus a bad person?
Yeah, I think a good person is basically, very simply, someone who stands up for what's right, stands up for their own wellness and for the wellness of others.
Okay, so someone who does what they think is right is a good person, but doesn't everybody do what they think is right or what they should do in a given situation? Because everybody justifies things that they do. So by that definition, it's just a good person is just any person. Do you see how that's kind of problematic?
I see what you're saying. I guess maybe my wording is not as clear.
Well, give me an example of a bad person.
I hardly think there is a bad person. If you want a specific example, I don't listen to the show often enough to know, again, if this is a bad thing to say or not. But I mean, Donald Trump to me is a very bad person.
Okay, let's try. That's fine.
But in general, I think most people are good.
Well, we can talk. I mean, I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about here on the show.
Yeah.
We can talk about why you think Trump is a bad person.
Well,
let's try someone. Would you say, I guess, Hitler is a bad person? That's always an easy go-to.
Well, sure.
Okay. Who do you think was worse, Trump or Hitler?
Oh, I think they're about even. I don't know. I mean, I think you could split hairs either way. I think that.
Okay.
I mean, Hitler is solely responsible for the death of millions of people. So in that category, absolutely. But if you break it down into as a person, I'm not a Nazi. I'm not anything bad, but
sure.
I think that.
Well, Ashley,
I think every person has good qualities. I'll say that. Even the people that I dislike
I don't,
have good qualities.
Sure, and Ashley, I don't disagree with you. If you mean all people are good in the sense that they have good qualities about them, they have the potential to choose to do good, that they can have good virtues, I firmly agree with you. I think almost any religious person would agree with you that all people have some kind of goodness in them. And in fact, the Catholic Church teaches that human beings, even after the fall of man, we retained some of the image of God, and that we all have a conscience that God gave us that can tell us when something is good or bad. But your definition, I think that when you leave behind religion and God and an objective grounding for morality, you have a problem when you have these kind of universal terms like, good, objective good and objective evil. Because you said a good person is just somebody who stands up for something and does what they think is right. Even under that definition, Hitler thought he was right and he stood for something, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like that's twisting it slightly. I think.
Go ahead.
Good in the context. I mean. Yeah. Okay. Good. Maybe good is too general of a term to use for this.
Well, I think it's important for us to know, because if your goal in life is for someone to be a good person, if we have the definition so vague, then any kind of behavior qualifies, and we have kind of an anarchic and a society that lacks virtue, that is kind of relativistic, where people call good evil and evil good. And that's something that I find to be distressing. So I'm willing to give you one. You could take another shot at it if you want. What would make someone, what makes someone a good person?
Well, I guess I would sort of rephrase all of this into my point is that, there are religious people that are good people. Many religious people are very, stand-up citizens.
The same is true for non-religious people.
Exactly.
Sure.
Right. And that's my point, is that to have a moral compass, the moral compass that religion offers many people, I feel like there is an equally just and fair moral compass among people who, oppose religion or just find themselves outside of religion.
Okay.
I feel like we would agree on the terms of a good person. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that human beings are all capable of knowing the objective moral law, these objective universal principles of morality, because for me, I think from a religious perspective, it makes more sense to say all people can access this because they've had this universal moral law written on their hearts by a universal moral lawgiver, even if they don't know him personally. We only have a few more minutes left to share with one another. So I would like to ask you, you seem like to be a very committed atheist in the sense you're sure that God, are you willing to say God does not exist? And if so, why do you think that?
Well, I don't know that anyone can fairly say that God does exist or doesn't exist, but as strongly as I'm able to, yes, I believe there is no God.
Why?
Yes.
Why? Why are you so strong about it?
I was raised with a mildly religious background, Christian background.
Okay.
It seemed illogical to me, to be honest. And if you break it apart, there's not to say that there's not value in it.
Okay.
I believe there's value in it.
Can you give me an example of something about believing in God that you see to be illogical?
Oh, I don't know, like the Noah's Ark thing. I think that makes no sense to me. I guess I'm more of a logical, like scientific-minded person,
Mm-hmm.
and Noah's Ark, for example, that story couldn't have possibly happened my eyes.
Is your understanding of the story that sometime 4,000 years ago, every single animal species on Earth was put on a wooden boat?
Right.
Okay. Is it possible that the story may have another kind of meaning? Like, for example, maybe this passage in the Bible is part of epic poetry communicating a truth about God that's not literal, like a newspaper account? Because it seems to me, do you see how there's like kind of a jump that you could believe the Bible comes with different genres, literal and non-literal? Like, why would you have to jump all the way to atheism? That seems kind of like an unwarranted leap when there's a few other options to pick before that point.
Yeah, I guess to me, I agree with that, and obviously Noah's Ark, to me, there is value in that story, and many Bible stories.
Okay.
But to me, that's all it is. And, the Bible was written by man.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just kind of the feeling that you have as a Christian that you probably would say, I know there is a God. I just, to me, have I questioned it? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sit with me. In my heart, I believe in science. And I just believe in nature and the good of humanity, and I believe the good that
let me ask you one more question. Sure, let me ask you one more question while we're here, because you believe in science. Science tells us different facts about the world. You believe in goodness, though. Do you believe there is a fact in the world just as strong as the fact that the earth is round, that says you ought to be good and avoid evil? You must, as a human being, you have a duty to be good. Do you think that is a fact?
Yes, I believe humans are born with that in their heart. Yes, I do believe that.
Where does that come from? What makes it true?
I think it's innate in humanity. I think it's innate in humanity.
But don't humans also have a very innate desire to do evil? For example, what % of people lie?
You know what? I don't think that people have an innate sense of doing evil. I think that it's a lot of times it's circumstantial, and it's with the intentions of gaining power or control or some sort of resources. And
but human beings still do bad things. I'm sure you see this all the time as a social worker.
But in your example of, is Hitler a bad person or a good person, do you think Hitler was, again, I'm not pro-Hitler or anything, but in your example, do you think, like, as a 2-year-old, he was, how do you think he was acting as a 2-year-old?
Probably
along the line.
Probably similar to my 2-year-old, but with a German accent or an Austrian accent, I would imagine.
Right.
But I was amused because, I mean, One's eyebrows are always raised when a person says, I'm not pro-Hitler or anything, but I see what you're saying. But I think sometimes where our disagreements can arise when it comes to religion is the thought that religion teaches that human beings are just kind of worthless piles of scum apart from God. And that might be what some religions teach, but at least it's not what my religion teaches, which is the Catholic faith. My religion teaches that human beings are good, just as you believe that. But because we're made in the image and likeness of God, and we detect that moral duty that God has given into our hearts, and God not just aligns our compasses, he points them in the right direction and gives us the gas in the tank to go in the right direction when it comes to that.
Ashley, thanks for the call. We got to go because the music's playing, and the music is the boss around here. But if you hang on for a second, we'll send you one of Trent's books, Why We're Catholic. You might enjoy it. We'll be right back with more Why Are You Not Religious?
We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old children or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture decays, we have to know how to talk to our children about these issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level to meet the world's challenges. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging onto the shop at Catholic.com.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humani Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and, unfortunately, inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Pope Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humani Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic comes up among friends, family, and coworkers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or by visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
Tomorrow is the feast of St. Gerard,
patron of expectant mothers and those having difficulty conceiving.
Join Take Two tomorrow to share your experience with having a child when told that you couldn't.
Now let's return to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest this hour and next is Trent Horn, and there's usually a long line to talk with Trent. So if you want to talk with Trent about why you are not religious, 888-318-7884 is the number to start dialing. 888-318-7884. We go now to Gilbert in Dayton, Ohio. Gilbert, why are you not religious?
Hello. I just driving in my car and overheard I go by the name Gil, actually, but officially named Gilbert.
Sure.
But just had a question about why I'm not religious is because history shows me that religion has caused the reason for a lot of wars, throughout the history of our world. Mm-hmm. And I see things going on right now about where, the Jews against the Catholics and those type of situations. And so I just really wanted to hear your thoughts on if you thought that has anything to do with possibly all the attack on all the Catholic priests and the situations there. Are they trying to gain an upper hand in this world of righteousness here on this globe?
Is who trying to gain an upper hand? Gil.
Each denomination.
Oh, okay. Like when the criticism of Catholic priests and things like that. I haven't seen that, at least in the recent clergy abuse scandal. I think the different stories about abuse, almost all of them predating the year 2002, when the Catholic Church put in reforms in the United States to prevent abuse from happening, that these stories have been unearthed through grand jury investigations, and those who have been involved in criminal activities, either directly or indirectly, they must be held accountable. And I've talked about that here on the show and also on my own podcast, The Council of Trent. However, on the larger question about religion causing wars, I don't think that's a good reason to not be religious, for several reasons. One, when you look at the history of the world, most wars have not been fought solely because of religious differences. The biggest reason people have engaged in armed conflict is usually for resources, natural resources like minerals, land, things like that. I would say land is probably stuff. We'll put it that way. Most wars are fought for stuff, whether it's land or resources, whatever it may be. But if you continue that argument, if someone says, I'm not religious because most wars are fought for religion, then you'd have to say, I don't want to own stuff because most wars are fought over stuff. But most people are still fine owning all their stuff, even if people have fought over things for centuries. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Well, I do, but yeah, that's why I'm I give a lot of stuff away that I have.
Well, good. That is a wonderful virtue, the virtue of generosity. So I think that if we see that there can be the virtuous ownership of goods, that you don't, you own things and you don't resort to stealing or warfare to get more stuff, then I think you can also practice what's called virtuous religion. That all religion is, it's kind of funny, a lot of people throw that term around. Religion is just man's response to God. Man comes to understand God exists, and so man wants to respond to God in some way. And I think there are good and there are bad responses. But just because there are bad responses doesn't mean there's no such thing as a good response. So when it comes to violence, I mean, if you think about it, in the past, century, in the past 120 years or so, can you think of a armed conflict, at least that has been the fault of Christianity?
Well, through the different the Jews against the Muslims, and so.
Right. That's why I picked a specific religion. Yeah, well, the Middle East is a complicated question that if you just reduce it to religion, that doesn't get you to answer the question, because there have also been non-sectarian leaders in Middle Eastern countries. The country of Iraq, for example, was ruled for a long time by a non-sectarian religion that didn't promote an official view of Islam. So the strife that we see in the Middle East is I think, primarily caused by the competition for limited resources in that region. But once again, so going back to it, though, it's funny, Cy, I remember I was looking at a map on a news website, one that should remain unnamed, but the title was A Year of War and Religion. Okay, and it had like a map of the world, and it had different dots of religious conflicts, and yet I went and looked at each map and then read up on the conflict, and there is one instigator behind every single conflict.
I'm gonna think. Who could that be? Okay, I got it.
Go right ahead.
I don't want to say
it was not George Burns.
Okay,
it was not George Burns behind it, but no, it was Islam. And so it's funny, I just saw that was an interesting bias. Instead of saying a year of Islam and war, it's a year of religion and war. It's true but inaccurate. So Gilbert, I'm very grateful for your call, and I hope that is a helpful answer to you. But I think that bad things happen in the world not because... here's how I'll put it. The late atheist Christopher Hitchens once said that religion poisons everything. I think it's actually the other way around, that true and undefiled religion that we give to God, everything in this world that is sinful ends up poisoning religion. So when you get human beings together, whether they're religious or not, their bad traits will come out. The question is, do you have something like the religion God has given us that has grace and that has means to restrain our sinful impulses. So something to think about, and thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Gil. 888-318-7884 is the number. If you are not religious, we'd love to talk with you today. If you're a religious believer, hang on for another day, or a religious practitioner, hang on for another day. Today we are discussing with non-religious people why they are not religious. If you're not religious and you'd like to talk with Trent and I, give us a call, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Ryan, listening on 91.5 FM, is up next. Ryan, why are you not religious?
Well, I guess that's kind of, I was telling the person who's screening me, that's kind of a difficult thing to say, because, to be honest, I don't really know if I'm particularly religious or not.
That's fine. Tell us what do you think
in God.
Okay.
One moment here. I feel like I'm having trouble with my phone. Oh. Okay. So yeah, I do believe that there is God, and I came about this experience. It's kind of a strange experience because it happened doing something that I feel as though most religions would frown upon, and it happened during a psilocybin mushroom experience that I had, and it seems as though that would be something that is kind of sinful, I guess, or viewed as something that is sinful. And I was, before that, like one of the previous callers who you were speaking with, I felt as though I was very, I needed concrete proof to believe in anything. I was like, the whole idea that God existed was totally, I was like, no way. When you die, that's it.
Okay.
I was like, life is it just is what it is. There's no God behind it. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that God created the earth or the universe out of nothing.
Okay.
But then I had this very powerful experience while I was, I guess they call it tripping or whatever.
You mean hallucinating?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They call it hallucinating.
Sure.
But I tell you, this experience was so clear and so powerful. I just remember feeling like this overwhelming love of all humanity, and I had this experience where I saw the earth and the universe being created out of nothing, and just kind of coming into being. And what I felt behind that was that there is God, and that it is this ultimate. The only way I can describe it is this ultimate white light of just loving, divine, like just pure love energy that just created all of this for us to experience it, only for us to come to the realization that God created all of this for us to realize that
Ryan,
there is God.
Let me jump in here. First, I would, to all of our people who are listening, I would say what I was taught, back in the early 90s, kids, stay in school, don't do drugs. Because, Ryan, you sound like a very thoughtful, intelligent person who's trying to do what's good in life. And I would hate to see you ingest any substance that could cause damage to the thoughtful, intelligent person that you are. So I'm very glad that you have an open mind and you called in and you're sharing about this. I really am. And who knows? There's different things that happen to us in life that can cause us to have a reality check, or just basically broadens our mind to see the world's a lot bigger than we think. I guess in your case, it was using a hallucinatory drug. For other people, they have that reality check moment when they have a near-death experience. That they are about to die or they clinically die. And then they realize there's something more to life than the material, and they have that kind of white light experience that you had. So it's possible, so just like someone with a near-death experience who has some kind of harm come to their brain, the soul or self rebels against that, and you see this, you might have had the same kind of reality check with this drug experience. So one, I would say recommend to our listeners not to go down that path, because actually in the history of the saints, there have been saints who have experienced this love of God through prayer and meditation. Some have even described it as ecstasy. The word ecstasy coming from two Greek words, ekstasos, to be outside of oneself, that they're able to achieve this same kind of, I guess, enlightenment, you could call it, just through prayer and meditation and becoming separated from the noise of the world around them and focused on who they are in relation to the ultimate grounding of reality itself. So I would encourage you to continue to understand this when it comes to finding out what it means to be religious. In fact, if you'll stay on the line, our call screener can get your email address, and I would be happy to send you just some basic resources to help you begin the path to understand about being spiritual. And then maybe even just with prayers, just try to find a time just to relax yourself without any substances to help you, a quiet place, maybe light a candle if you need to, and just, and then just close your eyes and say, God, if you created this whole universe, you're all powerful, you made everything and you made me, let my heart, let my mind be still to come to know your presence. And just start with that. And then from there, I would encourage you, I know there's a lot of different kinds of religions, but I firmly believe that when people get to know Jesus, they see that one religion sticks out among all the others and shows that God has come down among human beings to reveal himself. So you can go to our website at Catholic.com and just type in Jesus and read about him. And I think that it'd be very helpful for you. So do stay on the line, give our call screener your email address. I'll give you some resources because I'd like you to continue your spiritual journey in a way that is most conducive to your health and your happiness.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks very much. There are a lot of people, Trent, who have gone down the looking for spiritual experience through various chemicals and things, and enough of the stories end up really bad that it might warn you, not that path. Take another one.
Yeah, I would say that the harm that can come from these severe hallucinogenic drugs,
right.
That Ryan's talked about how you guys would probably think it's a sin. I don't say that in the sense that there's an arbitrary rule saying you can't use drugs like these. I would say that just from a principle of reason that, if you're driving a car or let's say you're flying a plane, it's not a good idea when the plane's not on autopilot to just go into the back and mix yourself a drink and totally not have your hands on the controls, because our bodies and our minds, we're capable of doing really great or really bad things. Decisions we make are important, and to basically let go of the wheel and say, who cares? I don't need to be in control right now. You wouldn't let go of the wheel driving on a mountain road. You wouldn't let go of the yoke if your plane is not on autopilot. The sin of drug use or excessive alcohol use, for example, any kind of drug abuse is marked by the rejection of the rational mind, of giving up rational control over your mind. And when you do that, you stop being human. You stop being able to act in a moral and restrained way. It can be very dangerous for yourself and others. So if there's any good that came out of this, and for other people who have had kind of awakenings, the comparison I would make would be like to a near-death experience, that even though you experienced a great harm or injury, at least through this terrible sequence of events, you came to see a broader picture of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean the next time you want to see God, you're going to, jump off a cliff again. There's other ways to do that are less injurious to your health. Right. And so that's why I think through prayer, through meditation, and people have said, well, why is Trent talking about meditation? What is he, why isn't he telling Ryan to go pray the rosary? Look, I believe people need to be met where they're at. And I think for some people, just being quiet for a second is where they need to be at. They're not even ready to, or at least if they can pray. A lot of people think of prayer as like, I'm going to sit down with the rosary and I'm going to pray. Prayer is just communicating to God. Even an atheist can pray, because you can just say, hey, God, if you're there, can you let me know?
Yeah.
That is a prayer.
Yeah.
And so I think a kind of prayer like that would be helpful for Ryan. But I think at some point to start, in order to see that God is there and to see the virtue of religion, I think you have to unplug from the noise around you. That's why there's a great book written by Cardinal Sarah called The Power of Silence Against the Dictatorship of Noise.
Yes.
Wonderful book. Wonderful man, wonderful author. And I'm not just saying that because he endorsed my new book with Layla Miller, Made This Way, but it's a great book nonetheless.
But Cardinal Sarah did endorse Layla Miller's new book with Trent Horn's name on it, and you can get that at shop.catholic.com. It's called Made This Way. And maybe having had that conversation, we'll commend that caller to St. Teresa of Avila, whose feast day it is today, and she's the great church doctor of prayer, as it turns out. and she can teach you more about prayer in a very short time than just about anybody who has ever lived. Right now, we're giving away something free, Trent, right now, this very moment. Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, an ebook that we have published. You can get it for free by going to the Catholic Answers Facebook page and signing up there. You just go to Facebook, put in Catholic Answers, go to our page, and sign up, and you will get the free ebook, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. Do it now.
Join us on air today on Catholic Answers Live.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization Online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, communicating the faith.
What makes me happy is listening to Catholic radio. I'm by myself a lot. Had a concussion as a child and I can't see very well, but I do work. I go to church and I'm an on-fire convert. And as a child, more or less, I've learned to have a good sense of humor whenever I can, and I'm very appreciative of everything I have, and especially Catholic radio.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest this hour is Layla Miller's co-author on a brand new book, Made This Way: How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. This really is, I'm kind of, I am facetious about a lot of things, but not about this. It's flying off the shelves. I'm not being literal about that, but I'm also not being facetious. This book is very, very popular.
Yes, figuratively, it's been selling a lot. Soon, we're hoping that for home delivery, we'll get those drones working, and then it will literally be flying off the shelves and straight to you. So your little Catholic Answers drone. But until that time, they're figuratively moving a lot. I know that there are parishes actually across the country. One parish ordered 800 copies of that book through our bulk order pricing to give to each of their parishioners, parents, grandparents, really anyone. The book is great, even if you don't have children. Made This Way is about how to explain tough moral issues to kids, elementary, middle, and high school. Even if you don't have children, I find the book is incredibly helpful. I know people have told me, I really learned a lot just about the church's moral teachings just reading this. I mean, if you can explain a teaching of the faith, if you can explain anything to a small child, if you can explain something to a small child, that shows you understand it. And that's kind of a funny thing when you read different authors. They'll describe something in kind of convoluted ways, and you'll say, oh, does this guy really get it? But if he can sit down, if a scientist can explain the theory of relativity to a 6-year-old, that guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's what we tried to do with our book, to take the basic principles of church teaching on contraception, abortion, pornography, divorce, transgender, homosexuality, so-called same-sex marriage, so that anybody can understand them and explain them. And so a lot of these parishes have seen, hey, I know people in my own life. Some people have asked me, well, for big kids, it's like what, age 12 to 18? Is there an age limit? And I say, well, some people never outgrow adolescence, so it's really age 12 to who knows. Infinity. For some people, yeah. Right. So if you're interested in getting the book or getting the bulk copies, getting 20 books for $100, that's $5 a copy just to give away to other parents, grandparents, and friends, go to madethiswaybook.com. That's madethiswaybook.com.
Why are you not religious? That's our question today. If you are not a religious person, if you do not practice a religion and you'd like to tell us what your reasoning for that is, why that is the case in your life, please give us a call, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We go now to Dana in Orange County, California, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Dana, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Why are you not religious?
Well, if I listen to Trent Horn and do what Trent Horn tells me to do, then when I die, I'll experience this glorious reward for all of eternity. But if I don't listen to what he tells me to do, then I'm going to have unimaginable suffering for all of eternity. And this is the foundation of every fraud that's ever been perpetrated on man. And that's really kind of one of the reasons I'm not religious. But I did kind of want to go back to Ashley's call earlier on you were talking about moral values and how maybe God is needed to have moral values.
Dana, I do have to interject. When have I ever told people they merely must do what I say they should do? Now, I think I understand what is true when it comes to religion, like what God has revealed to mankind. So I think it's helpful for me to give other people advice on how to come to know God based on his revelation. But I'm not setting myself up as some kind of a cult leader. I think if people came to you and said, how should I be happy? You'd probably have advice of your own from your own perspective to give them. So we're both two people trying to understand the world and help others around us. Would that be fair to describe you and I?
That would be fair to describe you and I. You are the explainer of the Catholic faith, the apologist for the Catholic faith, though. So You're the guy who's done the research that's now explaining it to other people. That's why I use that term. But I stipulate your point is a fair point. I agree with it.
So what did you want to talk about with Ashley's call?
Well, okay, so I reject that. Now, she announced herself as an atheist. That's not how I would announce myself. However, our moral values are really through the process of evolution, through natural selection. We get those values naturally. Now, the Creator may have designed that for us to get those naturally, but that's where they come from.
Okay.
And you really have to look at the evidence that you see in the world. You can't ignore it with the suffering, starvation, disease, just because a child can't get clean water. Mm-hmm. That God is very possibly malevolent, and the only reason that good things do happen to people is that sometimes God messes up and allows something good to happen, or he allows good things to happen so that those who are suffering actually suffer worse because they see people who aren't in their predicament. Okay. So you have to consider that if you're really going to establish the evidence.
Dana, I'd like to respond to that. It sounds like you were giving two separate arguments there. One about the origin of moral values, or a term I prefer are moral facts, universal moral rules that apply to our conduct. The other was a variant of the problem of evil. Now, on the first point, many people who call in, there's other people who say this, that, well, moral values, our moral beliefs come from evolution. I'll say that, I'd say almost all of our beliefs when it comes to moral behavior are conditioned by evolution in some way. But that doesn't tell us which ones we ought to pick. So you could say that the instincts we have, because you could say, we have instincts to be empathetic, altruistic. We also have instincts to be apathetic and to be deceptive with others. I mean, in the natural world, when you look at evolution has conditioned every other species on Earth to practice what among humans would be called theft, murder, rape. Those same instincts are in human beings. So evolution gave us instincts like pianos on a key, but evolution doesn't explain which keys you should press at a certain time. Sometimes violence is a good thing, a good key to press. Sometimes it's not. So I don't think evolution alone explains the distinct moral values that we have. That's one point. Number two, you brought up the problem of evil, and that is an argument many people have made against the existence of God, and we're running up against the clock here, but ultimately that argument assumes that God has no good reasons to allow evil to exist. And so somebody who would make that argument, they'd have to carry that burden of proof.
Well, your argument requires you to make assumptions. My argument is just evaluating the evidence that you see. And as far as God is really not particularly helpful at all in us deciding what is moral and what is not moral. What is helpful is for us to use our own minds, our ability to learn by our mistakes, our ability to communicate with one another. And just because we would like to have a list of what is moral and what is immoral does not mean we get a list. That's not how the universe is set up. We have to decide these things on our own. There is no magical person that's going to give us this on a silver platter.
Well, and Dana, I would agree with you that just because we want something to be true doesn't make it so. But it also isn't the case that because we want something, it's not true. That we have good independent evidence God exists, gave us our moral sense, and he's told us through natural law, and he gave us a list that sometimes is a good spiritual kick in the pants when we don't listen to our consciences of what is right and what is wrong in sacred scripture and tradition. Hope you call back. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Dana. Trent Horn is our guest both hours. We continue this conversation. So if you're on the line, stay on the line. If you haven't called yet and you're not a religious person and you'd like to share with us why you are not religious, 888-318-7884. The number, 888-318-7884. When we come back, I'll tell you something Trent forgot to do this hour.
Did you know you can book any of our great speakers to speak at your parish or special event? Contact one of our seminar coordinators through the Speakers Bureau section on Catholic.com today to find out more information.
Catholic Answers is a media ministry that serves Christ by explaining and defending the Catholic faith. We help Catholics grow in their faith, we bring former Catholics home, and we lead non-Catholics into the fullness of the truth. Our goal is to be the most trusted and accessible source for sharing, explaining, and defending the Catholic faith through as many media as possible, from personal contact to the most innovative means of mass communication. Have questions? We've got answers. Catholic Answers. Visit us today at Catholic.com or call us with your questions at 619-387-7200.
Archbishop Charles Chaput of Philadelphia says of why we're Catholic: clear, practical, simply organized, very readable, and rich in content. It's a pleasure to recommend it. Bishop Thomas Olmsted of Phoenix says, this book is made for the challenges of our times. I highly recommend it. Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking resource by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can hand to anyone as a starting point for helping them find their way into or back to the practice of the Catholic faith. Plant seeds of faith in the hearts and minds of your non-Catholic friends and family. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today. You can order your copies of Why We're Catholic by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Have you subscribed to the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter? This is Catholic Answers Live host Cy Kellett, and I want to tell you about our new weekly newsletter full of behind-the-scenes information and facts you need to know about the show. It's easy to sign up. Just visit CatholicAnswersLive.com and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front of the page. It's a great way to keep up to date with what's happening with the show and see what's coming in the days ahead, delivered weekly into your inbox. Sign up today for the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter and see what you've been missing. Go to CatholicAnswersLive.com.
Is the church wrong on contraception? In a culture that worships the pursuit of sexual pleasure, the Catholic Church's teaching on contraception can seem archaic and unintelligible. Its critics say it's outdated, theologically unfounded, and even harmful. And even faithful Catholics can have difficulty explaining this moral teaching. Catholic Answers is out to change all of that. That's why we've just released Trent Horn's dynamic new DVD, The Case Against Contraception. Using scripture, papal and magisterial teachings, natural law, and new insights provided by social science and medicine, Trent puts forward a compelling case for Catholic teachings with his trademark charity and persuasive graciousness. Be prepared to give a defense. Order your copy of The Case Against Contraception today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Can you trust the basis of the Christian faith? The Christian faith is under constant attack today in numerous ways, but the attack that does the most damage is the one that asks a deceptively simple question. What if your faith is based on a myth? The skeptics come with arguments to cast doubt in numerous ways, often attacking the reliability of the New Testament and the Gospels. And the sad news is that most people don't know how to answer these charges. The good news is that there are answers to each and every one of them. Good, solid answers. That's why Catholic Answers Studios has just released Jimmy Akin's new DVD, The Dawn of Christian History. With his characteristic wit and passion as a master storyteller, Jimmy takes you through an exciting detective story that reveals how history supports the Christian faith. Order your copy of The Dawn of Christian History today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks so much for being here with us. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Joined this hour by Trent Horn, one of our favorite guys around here, Trent Horn, and he apparently writes a book about once a week. It's not quite that often, but you have put out quite a few books. What are we up to now? Wait, let me guess. 7.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, you must have said it at some point. I must have heard you say it at
I
some
think
point.
it is 7 books at this point.
I think it is.
I think it is.
Who says I think it is 7 books?
Well, I don't keep pictures of my books in my wallet like they're children and, remember each day they were published as some kind of birthday or something. I'm very proud of that work and mostly of how God has used it to bless people and taking a humble guy like me, take somebody like me to go and write something that has really benefited people. It's, I don't know, it's placed, I'm very grateful that the works that I've written have helped people. It's just a lot of awe to see that, God would choose to use you in some way. And then you think about who you really are. And I think that, it's kind of like when Moses told God, you're like, you got the wrong candidate for this job.
Yeah.
This is, I put my resume in the wrong box. You feel that way sometimes. And yet but as I often say, God does not call the equipped. He equips the called. And he asks anybody listening here, I believe God has called you in one way or another, either to do something good for his kingdom or to come to know him in his kingdom, to know him for all eternity. And so that's why we're talking to people today. We're asking them, why are you religious? Or why aren't you religious? If you are not a religious person, I would enjoy talking to you about that. We'll just have an easygoing conversation and find out why that is. Though we did have an interesting caller who did not make it onto the air, Cy, who brought up a point. I think Marie told you about it earlier before the show started. He said actually the problem was I keep saying Christianity is a religion, and he disagreed with that.
Okay.
So... And we see this sometimes. My Protestant friends will bring this up. I remember actually my very first viral, not what's we're looking for here, video creation that I made when it comes to doing Catholic apologetics was a video, I think it was back in 2012, 2011. Do you remember there was this video from this gentleman? It was called I Hate Religion, But I Love Jesus.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it got shared all over the internet. So I made one of the earliest response videos to that. And that actually got shared a fairly decent amount. I remember I cut my own birthday party short to go home, set up my big Canon XL2 camera, and I wrote my own little
that's a little easier for you because nobody comes to your birthday party, right? You don't have to send anybody home.
Well, I still had to my action my action figures had to go back in their in the trunk. In their plastic sleeves to keep them safe. So yeah.
So you cut horn.
So then I went home, wrote that viral video, went out there. This guy saying, and we hear this all the time, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, why can't it be both? What's wrong with something being a religion?
Yeah.
Some people think religion is just an arbitrary series of rules and rituals that you just kind of jump through these hoops to get to God. And I agree that some religions could be like that.
Right.
But if you want to make a definition, what is a religion? Even anthropologists and sociologists have a hard time defining what a religion is. Is Zen Buddhism a religion? Because it doesn't necessarily believe in a supreme being, but at the same time, it seems different than a lot of other philosophies. It's a lot more transcendent in its thinking. It feels very religious. Religion, I define it this way: religion is just man's response to God, or man's response to the divine, the transcendent other order. But for shorthand, man's response to the ultimate might be a way I would put it. The ultimate, usually for most people, is God. That's just man's response. And as Christians, we don't believe religion's a bad thing. Like, we should only have a relationship with Jesus and not practice religion. That's nowhere in the Bible at all. In fact, the Bible upholds religion as being a good thing. If you read in James chapter 1, James 1, 25 through 27, here's what it says. He who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer that forgets, but a doer that acts, he shall be blessed in his doing. So James talking about how you can't just believe things. You got to also, your actions have to line up with that. So he goes on and he says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this man's religion is in vain. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. So the Bible is saying religion is a good thing if you're living out religion correctly, if you're responding to God by loving God and loving your neighbor who's created in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
So it's not either or. It's not, and rituals that we practice, they're not arbitrary. They're the very things Jesus gave us for salvation, such as pouring water over ourselves in baptism, being sealed with the oil of confirmation. Even people who listen who are not religious, they have ritual elements in their lives. They probably get together with friends and family on holidays. Maybe they blow out birthday candles on a birthday cake. These are all actions we do to symbolize things that really matter to us. So if ritual or rules are things that hold you back, you have that everywhere in life. If you have religion that is a good thing, you'll have it there too. There's nothing wrong with that.
888-318-7884 is the number. I'm only kidding about Trent's birthday party, too. Thousands of people come to Trent's annual birthday party.
Trentapalooza.
Trentapalooza.
And then after 10 p.m., it's Trent Unplugged.
That's sad when it becomes Trent Unplugged. 888-318-7884 is the number. If you are not a religious person, we welcome your call. 888-318-7884. Nick, do you know what it is that Trent forgot to do last hour? He forgot to kill me. Usually at some point when he's talking about morality with people, he will kill me off, and he didn't do it. He talked about Hitler, he did the whole thing, but he never killed me. You still have an hour left, I guess.
Oh, we've got time. We have time.
Brian in New Mexico, watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching on YouTube, Brian. Why are you not religious?
Hi, everybody. Sorry about my voice. I've been practicing singing this weekend, and it's a little bit hoarse. I'm not religious because I find that religion is teaching people that just being human is broken. And then there's this mind game going on of teaching people from birth that they can never be good enough. But to fix that, you're indoctrinated into an organization that says, we will teach you to love yourself even though inherently you're broken and there's nothing you can do about that. And I find that very distasteful.
Why do you find it distasteful that, let's take Christianity, for example, that teaches very simply, we don't live the way that we should? Don't you think most people feel that when they feel guilty about hurting others? That seems to be very uncontroversial.
That's not really what I'm talking about there. I'm talking about just being human. Yes, we fail each other back and forth because that might be because there's other circumstances going on. And when we've learned later on, but through our actions, of how what the effects were, we didn't intend that, or we didn't know that was going to be an outcome. So we can apologize to the person that was affected by that, but they should also understand that that wasn't intentional. If it was intentional, then we can take them through the legal process.
Well, Brian, sometimes don't we hurt other people not because we made a mistake, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was going to hurt you. I agree, sometimes we might cause harm to others through a mistake, like, oh, I didn't know that was wrong, or I didn't know that would hurt you. But don't you think in most cases when we hurt one another, it's because we were just being selfish? We cared more about our interests in that moment over theirs, or we just didn't feel bad about doing something that would hurt that other person? Do you think all wrongdoing is simply a mistake, or sometimes we just hurt others?
I think that teaching people that no matter what you do is not going to be good enough, that thought crime is going to be a sin against the deity.
Brian, where does religion, where does Christianity teach? I don't understand that phrase. No matter what you do is not good enough. Good enough for what? What do you mean?
Good enough to be in the good graces of the deity, the one that is judging you on what is right and wrong. Because it's like the deity is coming to the child, going, "If you could be a perfect person, then you can go past Peter into the keys of heaven." But the kid's looking at them, going, "I'm a human being. Why don't you come to me as a human being with proper standards of what a human being can actually do, and hold me accountable to that?"
Brian, isn't that exactly what Christianity teaches, that God has become a human being and given us things that we can do, such as having faith in him, learning his moral law, asking God to give us his grace so that it empowers us? The Christian faith, the Catholic Church, does not teach that human beings must be morally perfect in every single thing that they do in order to please God. The Bible itself says that the righteous man stumbles 7 times a day. The question is, will we let God into our lives so we have that relationship with him, so that we're connected to God by his gift of his very life to us, so we become more and more like him in this life, prepared for the next life? Christianity just doesn't teach that. I mean, if you think of it this way, if you were to go to God and say, I want to spend eternity with you, like even to say, I want heaven, I want perfect eternal happiness, on what merits could you demand that, to spend eternity with a perfect God, if you're not perfect?
Well, I would first want to know the character of this deity, even know if I want to have a relationship with it, because according to you guys, even your devil was able to analyze the character of the deity and figure out that, no, that's not a person that I want to have a relationship with because of its character. And so I think everybody should have that power to at least... Now we're kind of getting into, are you an atheist or are you a religious person? Because you can be an atheist and a religious person, but if you believe in the existence of the deity, that's completely separate on whether or not if you actually want to have a relationship with it.
Okay.
But the deity is coming across as saying, let me into your life. And I'll sit there and go, okay, let me know about you. What happens if I don't let you in my life? Well, I need to be in your life so that I can protect you from what I'll do to you if you don't let me into your life. I don't want to be spoken to that way, and I don't want to have a relationship with someone who speaks to me that way.
I think, Brian, that and maybe we've spoken about this before, this conversation seems a little bit familiar. I think you and I agree that human beings, we ought to be a certain way, but we always seem to fall short of that. You can call it sin, you can call it a mistake, but I think there's a big difference that we make mistakes all the time. I mean, if I fill out a math test, if I do a test in my math class and I end up getting an 85%, I've made some mistakes, but I haven't done anything wrong, immoral, or sinful. But if I turn in that math test and I did so by cheating, by looking at my neighbor, even if I get 100%, so I haven't made any mistakes in the test, I've done something wrong there. So would you agree there's a difference between mistakes and sins?
I believe that we wrong each other, and because we're not perfect, and we empathize with another human being because we understand the limitations of another human being, we come to each other as human beings with the expectations of what human beings can do. This deity isn't doing that. It's coming to us as going, you need to be more than human to even pass the test. Otherwise, you have, and by that fault, you have to let me in for you to even be considered to get past the keys of Peter
but Brian,
into heaven, because you can't even do this as a human being yourself. Right. So therefore, it's mandatory
but
for
Brian,
us to have this relationship.
If the only way for us is to be morally perfect is to allow an all-powerful God to make us perfect, then doesn't reason demand that we should do that?
Reason demands that this deity understand what it created and hold it to the standards of that creation, that of what it's able to do. It's like creating a child that can only jump 3 feet and looking at it saying, the minimum standard for me to love you is for you to jump 6 feet.
But right, Brian, he made us. He made human beings, and according to Christianity, human beings are in a fallen state because our first parents were without sin. They had friendship with God. They disobeyed God and lost those graces that allowed them to have moral perfection. And so we're born in this state where we can't climb out of it on our own, but God comes to say, I will help you out of this state that you are in. I mean, if I had a pill that you could take and you would never hurt another person again, wouldn't it make sense to you to say, oh, I'll take the medicine Trent's going to give me, instead of saying, why don't you just accept I'm somebody who hurts others? Why do you demand I take this medicine? It sounds like you're telling God he should just tolerate who you are, your faults, and if you hurt others, not saying, oh, I will accept the grace that you'll give me to be able to be better, to be what you want me to be. So I think that that's probably just the two different ways our listeners are probably going to have to look at this, and I'll leave it up to our listeners to see which one is more reasonable. But I am grateful that you called in.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that call. For those of you who are not religious and would like to share with us why you are not religious, 888-318-7884 is the number. Trent Horn is our guest, the author of many things and the maker of a podcast that I didn't mention. It's the Council of Trent is the name of his podcast. It's very popular, and you can find out all about it by going to TrentHornPodcast.com to subscribe. That's TrentHornPodcast.com. Anything interesting happening over there this week?
Oh, certainly. We're going to have several new episodes going up this week. Today, there should be an episode that has gone up about the end of civility. There was that video a few days ago about a pro-life advocate who got roundhouse kicked in the chest for being pro-life up in Canada. And other people, in the news talking about how we can't be civil anymore and just the loss of civility in our culture. And I share examples from Scripture and the life of St. Martin de Porres about how we can be civil in the face of grave evil and threats, and how we need that to live in a functioning society. And then I think tomorrow I'm just going to have a fun interview with Jimmy about Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and unicorns, and if they're in the Bible or not. And other bonus content that you can access at TrentHornPodcast.com.
All right. No, you didn't throw Yeti in there.
Yeti is another name for Bigfoot. There's also the folk monster that haunted the forest around where Jimmy grew up in Arkansas. I did not know. They had a Bigfoot-esque type creature there.
And and you lived in Arizona. Don't they have Chupacabra there? They got Chupacabra over there, I think.
Chupacabra is kind of like this weird alien demonic dog. It's very distinct from Bigfoot.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So I beg your pardon.
Yeah, let's. We will do our special show on cryptids and cryptozoology maybe next week.
TrentHornPodcast.com. Go subscribe now. It's a great podcast.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
If there's one thing atheists and theists can agree on, it's the fact that we've all felt the problem of God's hiddenness and have cried out, "Where are you, God?" The difference, however, is atheists think this is a reason to reject God and theists don't. Why? Well, first, God is not entirely hidden. Sure, we can't know He exists by seeing or touching Him, but we can know He exists through logic and reason. There's also good reason to believe God has revealed Himself through Jesus of Nazareth. If Jesus is raised from the dead, then everything He said is true. Second, God's in-your-face presence wouldn't necessarily make things better. Even on the natural level, we don't like overbearing parents. Why would we want God to be that way? So while God's partial hiddenness is a mystery, it's not a good reason to embrace atheism. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
The Church has 2,000 years of wisdom to share on what it takes to live life gracefully.
We're so overwhelmed by how much our faith has transformed our marriage and family especially. We want everyone to experience the incredible gift that the Catholic vision of life and love really is.
More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak. Tomorrow morning, 10 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn, our guest this hour. We're talking about we're asking, I should say, why are you not religious? If you're not a religious person, we welcome that call. Why are you not religious? I was struck when you were talking with Brian about the fact that as a Christian, I think we think of Christianity as an offer that God makes of help. But from outside of the Christian faith, I guess I forget that people look at it and go, that God seems so demanding, or he's just requiring all these things of you. I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that God does demand, in accordance with the principles of reason, that we be rational, we act in what's good for our nature as human beings. And so he is demanding, but not in a harsh way, just as we would say any parent demands or insists on what is best for their own children. So I think some people imagine that God is some kind of a capricious deity. He's someone who, through his own will, and maybe some religions or some Christian denominations teach this, that God caused us to be in this lowly state, directly caused it, didn't just merely permit it, for example, caused us to be sinful, and then judges us for that and condemns us, and then he gives us a kind of a mobster mentality: do what I say, or you're gonna, or I'm gonna really hurt you. But that's not the case. That sin is not something. So they treat it as sin is just something that God just kind of punishes because it breaks his arbitrary rules and it makes him grumpy. Rather, sin is just something when we act against reason, act against our own nature, is what God intends for us. So when we sin, God gets upset about sin because it hurts the children that he loves. When we sin, some sins it's easier for other people to see. It causes us to become selfish, greedy, manipulative. We view other people as objects to satisfy our own urges and indulgences. So when we sin, we end up hurting other people, hurting ourselves, and making ourselves miserable. And God doesn't want that for us. He wants to elevate us above where our fallen human nature is. And the only way we can do that is not through our own merely human efforts. It's by uniting our human efforts with the grace of God so that we become more and more like him. So that God makes us an offer of salvation. God wants us to freely choose him, that God is love, and so God wants us to be free, because love involves freedom, to freely choose him and to become more and more like him. I think what's unfortunate, Cy, and you know what, maybe on another show we'll have a Protestant call in and we'll have a discussion about this. I think a lot of people view this because they imagine the relationship between God and us primarily as a relationship between a judge and a person on trial. And we're kind of a criminal in the court, and God is this kind of harsh judge banging the gavel. And so when we accept God, it's just like he bangs the gavel and says, you're not guilty anymore because I said so. Whereas Catholics view our relationship with God more as a familial element, like, oh, I don't know, he's our Father who art in heaven. And so the best illustration, I think, in the New Testament of our relationship with God is the parable of the prodigal son, that we, through our foolishness, break our relationship with God, but God always stands there ready to welcome us home to him and to restore that familial love that we have, for us to be his adopted sons and daughters, to become, and through his grace, to become more and more like him, so that we can truly be perfect and we can really be able to rejoice in him and appreciate it. It's kind of like if you show a piece of beautiful classical music or a classic film that is just wonderful to see, but someone is so mired in bad stuff, like they just listen to horrible modern music. I'm not going to pick a genre because I don't want to alienate our listeners, but you can just imagine they watch horrible music, they watch horrible movies, maybe violent, but even horrible movies that are just saccharine and thin as cotton candy. And so when you show them like real good music or a really good movie, they say, I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. It was boring. I don't get it. And it's just because they're not in a place to be able to accept and see how beautiful it is, because they're so used to bad stuff. They can't appreciate.
They're not ready for the good
They're not
stuff.
Ready for the good stuff. Yeah. And that's what we have in our moral life. When we think with God about having a peace and tranquility with God and be able to act with virtue and courage and prudence and faith and hope and love in these saintly ways, people say, you're just a holy roller. You're so legalistic. Why are you so inflexible? To look at the saints who withstood, like in my podcast, I talk about St. Martin de Porres, who faced horrible racial prejudice for being biracial in the 16th century. Even fellow priests in his own priory made fun of him for being biracial, and people would spit on him and kick him. But in the face of that, he didn't show anger. He instead went to minister to them when these same people, when they had the bubonic plague, and then went to pray before God in the Adoration Chapel and was so lost in prayer that when the chapel caught on fire, he didn't notice. That's just someone who's just pious up in the sky. When you're so used to the bad and the worldly, it's just very sad. And so God has to do a lot of work with us, especially at the beginning of our spiritual lives. We have to see how bad the bad is before we can see just how good and beautiful the good is. At least that's my thoughts.
Preach it, Trent.
Now I got Tim Staples with me. Amen, my brother.
Well,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, Tim Staples did not invent the word amen. Is that what you're
I think, well, he's
used it more than
Tim
anybody.
may not have invented it, but I think it fell into the public domain a little bit back, and he might have snatched up the copyright to that.
Oh, fair enough.
It's quite possible.
888-318-7884 is the number. I have been remiss in getting to callers. I'm going to correct that very, very shortly. Why are you not religious? Hey, if you're online, don't go anywhere. I realize that I have made you wait for a long time, but I'm going to get you on with Trent in just a moment. Trent is the author of Why We're Catholic, Our Reasons for Faith, Hope, and Love. He is the author with Layla Miller. Look at how I said that. He's the author with Layla Miller.
Thank you, Sai.
Yeah, I finally credited you and not Layla. A book called Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. He's also the author of Persuasive Pro-Life. And, we got a new intern on the video. I forgot to mention him. Zach, thanks. You're doing a great job. Brandon, the video guy, has been completely lazy today because Zach's doing the work.
This is Dr. Scott Hahn, and stay tuned for more Catholic Answers Live.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humani Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and, unfortunately, inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Pope Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humani Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic comes up among friends, family, and coworkers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or by visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old children or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture decays, we have to know how to talk to our children about these issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level to meet the world's challenges. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging onto the shop at Catholic.com.
Tomorrow is the feast of Saint Gerard,
patron of expectant mothers and those having difficulty conceiving.
Join Take Two tomorrow to share your experience with having a child when told that you couldn't.
Now let's return to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you not religious is our question for callers today. Justin in Texas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130 Sirius Satellite Radio. You are up next. Justin, why are you not religious?
Hello?
Hi, Justin. Why are you not religious?
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm actually John in Portland. How are you guys doing?
Hi, John in Portland. I'm sorry. I had the wrong name. Why are you not religious, John in Portland?
Well, I'm not religious. I actually want to start off by saying that I was raised in a Catholic family at a Catholic school. And when I hear the word religious, I actually hearken back to the Bible verse in James 1:24. I might be paraphrasing, but I believe it says that religion, pure and simple, as God the Father accepts, is to look after the widows and orphans and to keep oneself unpolluted from the world. Are you guys familiar with that passage in James on religion?
That's right. We actually just quoted it earlier in the show. It's James 1:27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this.
Right.
But very good. Good to remember
so to
that.
Me, well, again, I was raised in the church.
Sure.
But I developed a lot of theological issues.
Okay.
When I hear the word religious, that has a word with a lot of baggage. It can mean spiritual. It can mean devout. You can be a Catholic and be lax, or you can be a Catholic and be religious. Wear a habit, for instance.
Sure.
So what do you guys mean when you say the word religious? Because to me, religion as defined by the Bible, it actually sounds like it's based on works and looking after people who need it and sort of maintaining your own path in the world.
Sure. John, I think you brought up a good point here. First, this passage in James 1:27, I don't think that it is defining what religion is, because it doesn't say religion is visiting orphans and widows in their affliction, keeping oneself unstained from the world. It says religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this. So it's a qualifier. In the letter of James, James is taking believers to task for saying one thing and doing another. He is not saying we should only do good works and not care about beliefs. That's the whole focus you read in James chapter 2 when he talks about the relationship between faith and works, and he's combating those who say, well, I only need to have faith, or, I can just have faith. He says, no, a man is justified by works and not by faith alone. But he's not saying you're justified by works instead of faith. So when we see that here in James, we have to just understand James is talking about the importance of living out faith, of being a consistent religious person, not reducing religion merely to good works. So that'd be point one. Number two, I just define religion very broadly for the purposes of the show to be man's response to God. Religion is just how we as human beings respond to God. And I think a lot of people who say that they are non-religious, they don't really have any kind of active response to God in their daily lives. They might vaguely acknowledge that God is out there, but it's not something they feel the need to respond to. They probably rarely, if ever, pray, for example. So I'm just using a very basic definition to encompass all different kinds of religion that can be out there. And I'm just talking to people who just don't believe in the necessity of responding to God in any kind of way through prayer, worship, the confession of sins, going to church to worship God, things like that.
Right. As an atheist, I don't believe that there is a God to respond to. So when I hear religious, maybe the interpretation, and again, it's just probably a language difference between us.
Sure.
It's sort of how people view their position in the universe, how you can view it as the sunrise or the birth of your first child. But I don't think that you can sort of start from a basis of religion as how you respond to God, because that presupposes that a God exists, which, don't get me wrong, I understand that you do. But I don't see any evidence.
Well, no, John, let me jump in here, because I think there are many atheistic sociologists, or at least I think that there are probably several atheists who are sociologists, who are psychologists. I know atheistic psychologists who study religion, because you can define religion as man's response to God. Even if you don't think God exists, it's indisputable there are people who do, and they respond to him in various ways. Right.
Right.
So
but
the people
again, the idea of a God is not necessarily a testable. You can't test whether or not. So the psychologists, the sociologists that you're talking about that do study religion, and again, I also studied that for a while in school at a higher university.
Sure.
What is the problem is that psychologists and sociologists approach the phenomenon of religion from an academic standpoint,
right,
without any theological baggage or ethical assignments to it. At least that's the way you're supposed to do it in academia. And what's sort of happening is, again, you're presupposing that religion as a phenomenon is a response to the presence of a higher divine power. And I would argue that religion exists as a phenomenon, as a response to those really tough questions. Where do we go when we die? Where were we before we were born?
John, I would disagree
is
that.
there good? Is there bad?
I would disagree because that makes the definition too large. Because you could define philosophy in that way. It's man's response to tough questions. I'm willing to give a definition for us to have a conversation and not quibble about the terms. So you could define religion. Religion is man's response to what he conceives God or the ultimate to be. So, I mean, people, I'd say the vast majority of people who are religious, who respond to God, think that God exists. Now, for you, if you think God doesn't exist, that's a very good reason not to be religious. Because, well, I'm not going to pick up the phone if there's nobody on the other, and make a call if there's no one on the other end to answer. That makes sense to me. Why you wouldn't be religious if you think there is no God, nobody answers up there. So I guess then my next logical question for you would be why you think there is no God.
Well, for one thing, every religion that offers its notion of what God, or even in some instance gods, plural, are, seem to contradict each other. To me, if there was a real divine power, it would make pretty certain that there were no errors in the knowledge it was transmitted to. For instance, in John 3:16, everybody knows, God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten son. But then in Genesis chapter 6, we hear that the sons, plural, of God are coming down and copulating with human women and having children. And this was a major reason for the flood. So even then, the notion of the only begotten son, which is central to Christianity, is sort of tossed out the window. So to me, it seems that
I don't think
there's no God as defined by the Bible, because the Bible contradicts itself so much.
Or you could say the Bible appears to contradict itself, that anyone who reads or tries to understand something could find what they think are contradictions. I mean, somebody, for example, someone who's just learning about science who reads a book on quantum physics or a book on evolutionary biology might find what they think are contradictions. And then someone who studied the field more would say, well, no, that's not a contradiction because these terms don't necessarily mean this. Even in the example that you raised, when the Gospels in the New Testament talks about Jesus, notice the qualifier here, the only begotten Son of God. So that shows that, well, Jesus is different. In fact, the very word son, to be a son of God, words can have different meanings. We do this all the time. I mean, when I talk about, use the word son, it could be used in a strict biological sense. My son is at home right now, maybe watching me on YouTube at this moment. I could talk about someone else, maybe someone I'm mentoring in apologetics. I might use the word son in a figurative sense, although I'd probably be a lot older before I ended up using that. So the Bible, we could see there's different terms. Someone might allege that there is a contradiction, but we could say, well, wait, let's look at the context, look at the language a little bit clearer. But I think when we say that if the Bible has a contradiction or not, we have to step back and answer a bigger question, which is, one, is there a God? And I think that's a question of philosophy, not one we get straight from the Bible. And two, did God reveal himself? And if Jesus is God and Jesus rose from the dead, then that gives us great confidence in the church he established, the Catholic Church, and in the Bible that the church has preserved for 2,000 years. And so do you see how when you look at the Bible, maybe God gave us something like the church to help us to understand it when there's parts that we don't get? Do you see where I'm coming from?
I see absolutely where you're coming from, because, in fact, you mentioned that sometimes even in the fields of science, biology, for instance, there can be what appear to be a contradiction, I believe were your words, and that as you become more learned and wiser to biology, you sort of begin to understand those contradictions aren't quite so contradictory, that there are rules. The difference between a theological debate or a theological theory and a biological or scientific theory is that everybody can perform the same test and everybody can arrive to the same conclusion. If God did exist and if he was concerned, or she was concerned about preserving our everlasting essence in heaven for all eternity, then it seems to me like a really loving God would have, frankly, done a better job.
Well, Justin, let me ask you a question. Is it possible God has a good reason for allowing some people to not have the full truth that he's revealed about them? Is it possible God has a good reason for doing that?
Is it possible that God would withhold information from an innocent human being with the full knowledge on his part that human being would suffer in hell for all eternity?
That's not the question I asked. I just said, could God have a good reason for allowing some people to not have a full knowledge of him? For example, one could, as long as God has a good reason for doing that, that doesn't show God doesn't exist or that disagreements among religious people show that there is no God. I can think of one possible good reason right off the top of my head. God may want us, just as he wants us to have free will in action, so he allows moral evils for the good of free will in action, God might also want free will in belief. He might want us to be able to freely choose him or not. And so in order for us to kind of have more freedom to choose him or not, God kind of has what's called among philosophers an epistemic distance. He doesn't make his existence obvious to all of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel as free to come to know and believe him, at least in this modern context in the world we live in, because we'd always feel like he's literally right over our shoulders. And so if God does that and allows so that people can have freedom in belief, and he makes sure that no one is damned through no fault of their own. So just for example, if God judges people based on the revelation they've received. And in fact, the Bible talks about that. Romans chapter 2, for example, God says those who never receive the 10 Commandments will be judged by their conscience, the law written on their hearts. So if God wants people to have free will and belief, and he will not damn someone through no fault of their own just because they were born in a time and place where they didn't fully come to know him, then I don't think that there's any contradiction there. At least that's something I hope that you and the rest of our listeners will certainly think about, and I'm glad that you called in.
John, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for that. Got to remind listeners that right now we have the store-wide fall sale going on. You just entered the promo code CALive18 at shop.catholic.com to save 20% off hundreds of items in our online store. Visit shop.catholic.com and begin saving, and be sure to use the promo code CALive18 at checkout.
This is Harry Connick Jr., and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
I love listening to Catholic radio. It's perfect. It provides peace and it builds us up and strengthens us. We listen to it whenever we're in the car. My husband and I love it. He got me started with it before he even became a Catholic. He owns his own business, and so he's working by himself, and he listens to Catholic radio, and he's called in several times too. It's using the technology that we have for good.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn. What Trent Horn?
I'm trying to think of a word to describe our new theme music.
How about awesome?
You know what's a word this is the word I would use to describe it, because it does give me a sense of nostalgia. It feels very tubular.
It does feel tubular.
It's tubular.
Yeah, it's tubular, man.
Yeah.
That is totally tubular.
I would be sitting around playing Pogs and eating my Otter Pop listening to this. It's very tubular. And I had the greatest, when I was in the 4th grade sci, I had this 8-ball slammer, and I owned every Pog on that playground. I was the king of Pogs.
Does anybody have even any interest in this whole studio to find out what
Let's
Pogs
find
is?
out. Okay.
Okay.
Intern, what's up? Do you know Pogs?
Does anybody know what a Pog is?
No. You know what a Pog is?
He knows what
you
a
know
Pog
what a
is.
Pog is.
What's
okay.
a Pog?
A Pog is like a little disc.
It's like a little disc. Oh, it was something that kids had and they traded and played for?
Well, you used a slammer, and you would slam down on the Pog, and then if they flipped, I think either face up or face down, you would collect them, basically. There's different kinds of slammers that you had, and so, yeah. It's a tubular show. I always appreciate a little bit of nostalgia.
I like learning about those things that happened after I was a child. Because when I was a kid, we just hit each other with rocks and sticks. And I'm glad that you guys had other...
The Stone Age must have been rough.
Yeah, it was a tough time.
That's why it's called the Stone Age, right?
Why are you not religious? That's our question of the hour. Trent Horn here to answer, to engage in conversation with people who want to share why they are not religious. Justin does this one I tried before? No, yeah, Justin in Texas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130 Sirius Satellite Radio. Justin, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you. Why are you not religious, Justin?
I find all religions that I've studied, and I've studied just about all of them, I think, by now, to be very short-sighted.
What do you mean by that?
I find when you look at all the religions across the board, and I'm not just talking about the current mainstreams, I'm talking about all the way back into history, going into Horus and Isis and so on, and Cthulhu and a couple others I can't even remember the names of, and I can't even pronounce because you get into that one religion, Metha something or other.
Mithra?
Yeah, and you get into all that stuff.
Okay.
But the point that I've fallen into kind of a rabbit hole, and I believe I find that I have faith in an all-powerful divinity.
Okay.
And that all-power divinity, when it first brought to me when I was a kid by a Christian pastor, he told me God was infinite,
okay. God
was all-knowing, and God was the creator of everything.
Okay.
Am I incorrect in saying that about the Catholic faith or the Christian faith?
All of those attributes can describe God, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So in that retrospect, after listening to the last two callers, I find the flaw, again, being brought to my attention that if that's the case, and he wants us to have free will and come to him freely of our own free will, then why is it that, and this is what gets me in all religions, is that why is it always that he's popping up over and over and over and over and over again? First, through these other deities, and then through Jesus. And I believe that they're all representations of the same God. It's the same thing over and over again to bring people back at a trying time or a bad time. And in that case, why is it that religions always make a finite God when they explain him? They always make it sound flawed.
Well, number one, I'm trying to understand the sense of your objection, Justin. It seems that you're saying, why are there other gods or other religions instead of just one religion everybody recognizes? And then two, you said, why are all these religions, why are their gods finite? First, I would say that there are other religions besides Christianity that teach that God is infinite. Judaism would be one, Islam would be another, Baha'i would be another example of that. Though it's no coincidence, I think, that they all kind of share the same spiritual pedigree, that Judaism in the ancient world was very unique in that it taught that God did not exist in competition with other gods, that there is only one God, that God is of unsurpassed holiness. And so God chose, through time and history, to take first a chosen holy people to help have them be witnesses of him to a kind of an ancient world, a smaller ancient world, until in the fullness of time, when the circumstances were right for him to enter into human history. And then from there, his new covenant would be known to the whole world. And so it's quite amazing, actually, that 2,000 years ago, the vast majority of the world was shrouded in pagan darkness. It was shrouded in a world covered with homage, with honoring of finite gods. But now, more than half of the world has, I'd say the majority of the world has come to know the true God. And the largest religion in the world knows that God revealed himself in the form of Jesus Christ. So I don't think the fact that people aren't 100% Christian right now does not say God does not exist. Other people intuitively can know that there is a God, and they grasp and reach for him and may come to think of God in incorrect ways. But those senses we have, I truly believe they do come from somewhere. I think they ultimately do come from him. So if you'd like more information on that and other topics, do check out our website at Catholic.com. And I thank you for calling in.
But sir, you're not even answering my question.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but I'll give it one more try. It's just we have one more caller I do really want to get to who has been waiting for a long time, so I will try one more time to answer your question. Is your question, why are there so many different religions?
That's the lady who answered the call to send me an email, and I will write my question down more directly as best I can.
Oh, that's a good. Okay,
Okay,
let's
Justin.
get your email
yeah,
address.
that's fine. I didn't mean to push you off, Justin. It's just on live radio, we have just a chain of callers, and I'm trying to finish all of them before the end of the show. So I really am grateful that you called. And if you stay on the line, I will happily answer your question more in a direct email. So will that be helpful for you?
That would be awesome, and I would like to be as respectful to the other callers as possible. And I really love you guys' show. It's just I get frustrated in this rabbit hole that I go down when I go into religion.
That's quite all right, and I appreciate you called in. So stay on the line. Our call screener will get your email, and I can give you a lengthier response.
Justin, thanks. Hang on a quick second, and Marie will get your digits. Let's go to Nicole in San Antonio, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Nicole, why are you not religious?
Hi, guys. Well, I used to be religious, but I gave up my faith almost a year ago now. And there's a lot of reasons, but I think the kind of initial reason that led it all was I came to realize that prayer was really a one-sided
Nicole,
undertaking.
I hate to do this to you, but you're sounding like we're talking to you underwater. Is there any way you can get closer to that phone or take it off speaker?
I'm kind of in a rural area. Is this better?
It is better, actually,
Yeah.
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I went near a window, so hopefully the signal's better.
Sure.
So yeah, what I was saying was just I came to realize that I grew up very religious and actually converted to Catholicism for a few years before giving up faith completely because I came to realize that the prayers that I had been doing, there's really nobody on the other end of them. Anytime there'd been a prayer that I considered answered, I could really look back at it and see, well, it was either a decision I was trying to make myself, and the prayer was just kind of me talking to myself, thinking to myself, and working through it, and then finally making a decision. Or it was something that was completely out of my hands and was going to go one way or another regardless of whether I prayed or not. And I think really that was true of other religious experiences that I had.
Okay.
I've had several really fantastic experiences during the time that I was Catholic, like locutions. I'd sat in Eucharistic adoration a few times and had some really great experiences. But looking back on those, it was really just my own imagination, which I was kind of slow to give up my faith because I found it sad. Like I wanted to believe in God and an afterlife and all the trappings that come with it. But it was actually kind of encouraging to think, well, you know, even though it's sad to give up this idea that I've had for so long and that I wanted so bad to be true about God existing and looking out for us and planning our lives and so on, I actually kind of had to give myself more credit of, you know, all the times I've prayed and there's no one on the other end, I was still able to use that as a way to work through things and make decisions on my own.
Sure. Nicole, let me jump in here because the reason with Justin, you know, we had to cut his call short is because I saw you waiting for a long time and I was very eager to speak with you because you remind me a little of somebody I like a lot, me. I'm just kidding. You remind me a lot of, like, when I'm in prayer, and I talked about this, I think, in my book, Answering Atheism, a lot of my prayer, I don't feel like some people. I get jealous. I see them pray, and it seems like they have this deep, ecstatic, you know, their palms open, high up in the air, charismatic, and it feels like they're really feeling God, and you know, they're talking to that other person on the line. And I don't honestly, I rarely ever feel that in prayer. But I feel like the grace that God has given me to help me relate to people who are kind of like yourself. Like you pray and think, well, I didn't hear a distinct voice from God. And I didn't see a miracle happen. I think that, you know, if I was to pray and ask God for something and he was to answer my prayer, I highly, highly, highly doubt he would do so in a miraculous way. That if I pray for something, it's going to be done in a natural but providential way. Providence is just another way of God organizing the universe so coincidences work for his good. And so you can take them, and I mean, if you want to, you can look at them and say, well, that's merely just a coincidence. Or you can take it and just as easily look another way and say, no, I think God has put everything together, and I'm grateful for whatever he has put in my life, whether it's for good or for ill, at least in the short term, for me to see things from a different perspective or, you know, to grow in holiness. So I guess what's hard is that, like, when you say, number one, you said, I know there's no one else there. If you're praying, you don't really hear God, things like that. At best, wouldn't you only be justified in saying, I didn't hear God answer my call, like you'd still have to kind of put a question mark about what's on the other end, right?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny because I'm one of those people who have the experiences of like the charismatic with the palms open, and I'd sit in Eucharistic adoration and swore I heard him talking to me. Like I was kind of on the other end of that.
Well, and you sounds like you hit a little spiritual dryness. I'd like to chat with you a little bit more and maybe give you some resources, because I would like to point you back to God, at least, even if you don't ask him for anything. Maybe just sometimes sit and listen to him. I find that helpful for me. So stay on the line, and our call screener will get your email. Please don't hang up. Give our call screener your email. I would like to continue our chat a little more, but I'm grateful you called in.
Thanks, Nicole. Maria will be with you in just a second, so hang on there. Thanks to all of our callers, and to you, Trent Horn, for 2 fine hours.
And to you, Cy Kellett, I didn't have to prove philosophy with a thought experiment that ended in your demise.
I really appreciated not dying on today's show.
You got away in this episode.
Well, Jimmy Aiken is in for 2 hours of open forum tomorrow, so he might kill me. We'll see how that goes
I'll
tomorrow.
see him tomorrow. I'll ask him.
See you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.